so we have more and more local fire staff on these burns supporting the efforts all the time. And so with that, I just kind of wanted to set that up, and Josh is going to talk about that, those fire-adapted communities and sort of the components of it. What I do want to say is I want to applaud the folks that put this together. And this is a huge opportunity. And so, and it's an opportunity that brings residents together, which is what we need. The hard truth in the cohesive strategy world, we are constantly talking with communities and doing learning labs, and we probably have the makings for a great learning lab out here after Barbara mentioned that exercise. But it takes the residents, right? And one of the hard truths that the West has found out is when they go into towns like Bend, Oregon, or Northern California, and they run the exercises, one of the hardest challenges they have is instilling the philosophy in the residents that, guess what, you're part of the solution. So the federal government and the state fire agencies and the local fire agencies, we can only bring so much to the plate. And so we need the residents that own those properties in those subdivisions or in those great landscapes to sort of work with us, come to the table with us. And boy, this is a fantastic model. I'm going to be sharing this with my friends in the West, what you folks put together here tonight. So with that said, I'm going to hand this over to Josh.
Good evening. Josh Nigro, DCR Forest Fire Control District Warden here for Dukes County. I'm just going to talk a little bit about kind of a newer concept, like Chief Slino talked about, the cohesive strategy. Part of that is fire-adapted communities, and that's the way we need to start our thinking. And we need to think of the Vineyard as a fire-adapted community. And here's the basic definition: a human community consisting of informed and prepared citizens, collaboratively planning and taking action to safely coexist with wildland fire. And that's why we're here tonight. We're actually doing that. I'd like to just show a quick video. I know it's kind of a cartoon, but I think it's really going to explain what it's all about and how we bring everything together.
This is Fred. Hi, Fred. Fred lives in a community that is on the edge of natural areas and where wildfire has been a part of the landscape and human history for centuries. Fred's neighborhood is much like your neighborhood, and the neighborhoods of 120 million people who live in and near forests and grasslands throughout America. Because Fred lives near land that needs fire to be healthy, he knows he has to live with wildfire. Fire is simply inevitable where Fred lives, so he has been working hard to prepare. He has been clearing vegetation from around his home and making sure his house is built with materials that are less likely to burn. Last year, he replaced his wood shake roof with a metal one. Fred also knows that his effort will be most effective when the whole neighborhood is prepared, so he's also been talking with his neighbors and encouraging them to prepare for wildfire. Hi, Fred's neighbors. Fred has even been packing a go kit with important papers, pills, photographs, and supplies in case he has to evacuate during a wildfire. Fred's neighbor, Damien, is a volunteer with the local fire department. Damien and his co-workers train together for forest fires, are properly equipped, and talk to the community about wildfire risk, the importance of being ready to evacuate if necessary, and even the best evacuation routes to use. Damien and his co-workers are also trained to use controlled burns in natural areas to improve community safety and give nature a boost. Across town, Lupe is working in her small bakery. She too understands that there is a risk of wildfire in her community, and so she has taken action to prepare her business. She has her computer inventory backed up off-site and has a business continuity plan that will help her stay in business after wildfire. Lupe's Aunt Mary works at City Hall. Mary has been working with the community to update the Community Wildfire Protection Plan and draft codes and ordinances that help people build new homes in the most appropriate places with materials that are less likely to catch fire. Mary works with developers to make sure new neighborhoods have more than one way in and out in case there is an evacuation. She has even been working with her local land management agencies as they identify land around the community that needs a little more work to be ready for wildfire. Fred, Damien, Lupe, and Mary are all working to make their community better able to live with wildfire because they know fire is natural where they have chosen to live. They understand their risk and are actively working to reduce that risk. Fred, Damien, Lupe, and Mary live in a fire-adapted community, even if they don't realize it. As we have seen from Fred and his neighbors, there are many tools and strategies for communities adapting to wildland fire. Not every community will use every tool, but generally speaking, the more actions a community takes, the more ready for fire it will become. As we have seen, Fred and his neighbors are taking action before a wildfire. But it is important to realize that community preparedness before a fire, safe and efficient wildfire response during a fire, and a well-resourced and supported recovery after a fire are all part of the process. What does success look like? Just like in Fred's neighborhood, success looks like many people working together to prepare for the effects of wildfire. In that way, the responsibilities and benefits of adapting to wildfire are shared among all those who live in places where fires burn. Here are 5 easy ways you can help your community become more fire adapted. 1. Make sure your home is prepared for wildfire by using fire-resistant construction materials and keeping vegetation from touching the structure. 2. Talk to your neighbors about wildfire and encourage them to take action too. 3. Prepare your family for an evacuation by making an emergency kit and having an evacuation plan. 4. Find out if your community has a community wildfire protection plan. Volunteer to work with your local fire response organizations to create or update it. 5. Visit www.fireadaptedwashington.org to learn more.
Okay, that's just kind of an overview of what fire adapted community kind of looks like. But the other thing I wanted to show you tonight was some of the things that we're actually doing here on the island. I think there's been some questions of what people have been doing, what all the different agencies are doing, and just kind of wanted to answer that. So kind of here are the bullets here of, again, what makes up a fire adapted community. I'm just going to kind of go through the biggest one that is kind of the foundation of it is the community wildfire protection plan. We're in right now, I know Joanne's going to talk a little bit about the initiative that we have right now with a federal grant to be able to get that written for the island, and that's kind of the foundation of what we're going to use. This right here is a picture of the one that was done for Barnstable County, and it kind of gives us that risk assessment of what areas need kind of some attention and kind of that overall arching of what the hazard is. And then part of that CWPP will also break it down into the local level. So each town will get a map like that with some of the hazard areas within that town based on not ownership, but the fire danger based on fuels, based on, distance from fire stations, all that sort of thing goes into that to give the town planners, the fire chief, selectmen, kind of a really clear picture of where they need to focus their efforts within the town. There's also, the other neat thing is the town of Gosnell, Cutting Island, actually has their own CWPP written for them. Part of that is also fuel reduction. And again, there's different ways of doing fuel reduction. Picture on the left is TNC over in Katama. That's one of the burns that we did here in the fall. And then on the right is Trustees of Reservations down at Long Point. They did some actually mechanical mowing versus fire. So there's a lot of different ways that we can do fuel reduction, but it is being done here on the island. There's obviously a lot to do. We also talked about our fuel buffers. The picture on the left is the state forest. I know Chief Salino showed a picture of that, but you can really see Dodger's Hole and those neighborhoods right next to it. And if you look at fire history on the island in southeast Massachusetts, the winds that we mostly worry about are those southwest winds, the dry winds without the humidity. And again, we have really prioritized those northwest corners. So if a fire gets going in the middle of the forest, where is that going towards? So if we burn a lot of that fuel, reduce the fuel, the fire will hit that, lose some of its intensity, really get in there. And obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about fire-wise in those neighborhoods, what we can do then. And then a picture on the right is mechanical clearing of some of the fuel buffer, what it would look like. Local capacity is the big one that we're working here on the island. Deputy Fire Chief from Aquina, they come out to our prescribed burns. The picture on the right was a burn that we just did in conjunction with the big training we did in the spring with local fire departments. West Tisbury Fire sent like 15 of their guys to get nationally certified in wildland fire. And we're actually going to be doing a bigger class this winter with a lot of the island towns getting more of the firefighters certified in wildland fire. So we are building that local capacity. One of the things that we have is plans, our agreements. So there is local plans, local mutual aid plans are written up. So if there is a fire in a certain community, what trucks are going and what towns are coming is already written down, it's in place, and it works very well. We then have some statewide or regional plans. So if there was a fire big enough here on the island, we do have those plans in place to get resources from off island, from some of the Cape towns if we needed to. And then we also have some federal cooperative fire agreements with aviation. If we had a big enough fire where we needed helicopters from the National Guard or State Police, those plans are in place and we can bring them over. And we also have the super tankers out of Quebec, Canada. We've actually brought those to the Vineyard. We pulled them and we actually tested that. And we can have those planes actually in the Vineyard from Quebec within 90 minutes if we were to call. And during a bad fire day, we have fire danger, we are already making those calls and getting those things in place in case we need them. We're being proactive, but those agreements are in place. Prevention education, everybody knows Smokey over in the corner of Barnes Road doing his message. We're getting them out a lot in the community to really, get the message out about most fires can be prevented. And again, the other big thing today is the Fire Watch program and just helping people harden their homes, look at their vegetation. There's 3 Fire Watch communities in Dukes County, Nats Farm and Hops Farm, both in West Tisbury, and the island of Cuttyhunk is actually also a Fire Watch community. If anybody would like their home assessed, us in DCR will come out to your home, we'll do a home assessment, and give you some basic suggestions on what you can do. Don't get scared with the slide with the metal roof. We're not going to say anything crazy. We're going to give you true things that you can actually do with that. And if you would like to sign up for a Firewise assessment, we do have the sheets as you come out the door, and we also have a lot of brochures that you can read a little bit more. The other one is codes and ordinances, covenants of home associations. As you can see, houses down there with defensible space around their homes. That means the amount of distance between the woods and the home. In certain areas of town, require wood shake roofs and wood shake siding, which is counterintuitive to making your home fire safe. And that's something, again, that this group could work on when they're talking about, what initiatives within the community they can do. And how we do it, it is the collaboration. The reason we're here tonight, together as a group, as a community, as an island. That's the only way we're going to do it. But as you can see, everybody's doing their part. I'm just going to kind of do that together. Really important. Thanks for listening. And again, we talk about wildfire adapted community, but wildfire adapted island is where we are.
and I've been working on wildfire planning for, I'd say, going on 15 years now, since we started the first hazard mitigation plan for all of Dukes County in 2009. Then we updated that one in 2015, and we are presently updating the 2015 plan for 2020, and you're a part of that tonight. Okay, now the first thing is people think of California for wildfires, and like it could never happen here. But as recently as 1957, there was a wildfire very close to us. It burned 18,000 acres from Carver all the way to Cape Cod Bay, which is the only reason that it stopped. And it burned pitch pine and scrub oak. Sound familiar? Okay, so I think you're getting the picture. In the first 6 hours, 12,500 acres burned at the rate of 53 acres a minute. So at that rate, the central part of our state forest, that's 4,500 acres, that would be consumed in 85 minutes. All of it gone. So we don't have the Santa Ana winds and, a spark flying miles and starting a new fire, but we're not immune to having a bad wildfire right here. And since we've got climate change is not working in our favor either. When I started this, I used to have to say, well, you're going to find this hard to believe, but you know that gentle summer rain that we have, and you're riding your bike and it starts raining and you just keep going? Well, climate science tells us that that's going away. Now, you can see that. I don't have to project it. We know that we've lost our gentle summer rain. We have periods of drought punctuated by very heavy rain. So, and that is our norm. That is what we can expect for the foreseeable future. We will have somewhat more rainfall, but it will be in the winter and the spring. It won't be in the summer. Okay, we did a rough wildfire vulnerability assessment when we first started doing hazard mitigation planning. We looked at the literature and we produced a map that covered the whole island with vulnerability, and that didn't work for us. So we went to the then State Forest Superintendent, John Varconda, and he looked at our results and said, well, that's from California, where a spark can fly with the Santa Ana winds. And so with John's help, we worked out a simple method of wildfire vulnerability assessment. And this is the town of Gosnell, our neighbor to the north. And using our factors, we looked at fuel, and we also looked at areas that have development that is next to at least 50 acres of contiguous woodland. That was our cutoff to make a vulnerable spot. And as you can see, Cuttyhunk Island at the far left doesn't even come up with that criteria. Noshawn, people live on Noshawn too, and you can see that does have some heavy vulnerability. Now, Josh started talking about the fire professionals do a wildfire management plan, which we hope to get done. And this is that same Cuttyhunk that didn't even register on our rough and dirty assessment. And these are fuel loads very specific to the island of Cuttyhunk. And you'll see the gray is where most of the civilization is located. Those are houses, roads, and that is not part of the wildfire vulnerability. that is a different type of fire. So you'll see that that remains blacked out as well as open water. And here Josh showed you this too, cutting out the flame lengths based on that assessment of what the fuels are. And you can see once again the civilized part is blacked out because it doesn't have actual vegetation as much as impervious cover. And if you look at some of those flame lengths, I don't know about you, but if I saw a 72-foot tower of flame, I would think that would just be pretty intimidating. And that's not exclusive to California. Next, these fire professionals who do the wildfire management plan, then they predict, using the fuels and flame lengths, then they predict a rate of spread of fire. And if you'll see, the highest category will spread at 400 feet per minute. And that is depending again on what the fuels are and other factors that go into this plan. So our hazard mitigation plan, we are presently have an approved hazard mitigation plan for all 7 towns in Dukes County. And that does mean that we're eligible for FEMA funding to do mitigation. And we're presently updating that plan. It has to be done every 5 years. So we'll have a brand new one in 2020. And it enables the towns to do planning grants, such as the wildfire planning grant that I still have high hopes for. I think it's a good plan. It's got a good chance of being funded. And will be funded 75% by FEMA and 25% local match that Chief Alex Schaefer has taken on as his responsibility, and I'm sure he's welcome to any contributions are very welcome. And besides the grants, I think these planning efforts are good for consensus building and for people to prioritize and recognize, recognize the vulnerability and also to look at mitigation strategies, which Josh showed you quite a few possible mitigation strategies. This is the only one that's wrong. This is the wrong thing to do. What we talk about is scary. And it's gratifying to me as a planner to see hazard planning coming out of the closet, so to speak. When I started this, more than a decade ago, it was only first responders who would talk about this, and nobody else, nobody else was involved. And we're gradually seeing that change and seeing now, like a room full of people like this, of grandmothers knitting, and just people who are involved and recognize that that there's something that we can do to reduce our vulnerability. Anything that we can do to keep us safer, prevent loss of life, prevent property damage. That is a plus for us, and it makes us stronger. Just looking at it, facing up to it, and like Josh said, recognizing that we live in a land that has always depended on fire to maintain the proper habitat. So here are some other possible strategies, and some of them, like Josh already said, some of them are regulatory. They don't cost money. Regulate subdivisions. We have subdivision covenants still on the island that require people to have cedar shingles on their roofs, and that's not. In a vulnerable area, you need metal or asphalt. I haven't seen the metal roofs, but asphalt is generally the go-to. And also, up island where we don't have hydrants, we can require dry hydrants to pump from nearby sources. A dry hydrant is like a hydrant, but it's put in place near a water source so that in case of a bad fire, one fire truck sets up right next to this dry hydrant and pumps water out of the pond, and that truck just sits there and pumps, and the other trucks come up to that truck and get water from that truck. But having that dry hydrant there is a possible way to save some lives, save some property damage, and they're not, they're not very expensive. If somebody's doing a development, the town just says, well, you will install this and have it ready for the firemen. Control burns, another way to reduce fuel, another measure. And there are very detailed strategies in the wildfire management plan that I'm still hoping to get funded by FEMA. And again, those strategies build on the very specific vulnerabilities that are identified when they do the assessment. And Josh showed you the Barnstable plan. If anybody wants to see what it looks like, go to the Barnstable County website and you can see their plan. And that's what we hope to do, is have a similar plan for all the 7 towns of Dukes County. So, cross your fingers. All right, thank you.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming, and we're going to do a question and answer now. Well, I don't know about you, but I've learned a lot, and I'm still scared. I'm learning how I can help, and I guess I'm going to put a few people on the spot. One of the reasons why, I started thinking about this, and my concern is walking. For me, I'm near a land bank property. I walk a lot. There's a lot of dead wood. We know it's not just our conservation lands, but we know it's our properties, our neighbors' properties, the state forest. We've heard a little bit about mitigation, what the state forest is doing. I'm concerned that they talk about a fire tower, and I don't know about anybody else, but I don't know where there's a fire tower, and I don't know if it's manned. So do we have anybody actually looking out for fires? And I am going to hand this microphone to the land bank, because a concern of mine is that they are at the moment, and I'm not trying to just put you on the spot. I know that they're one of the largest property owners on the island, and that a property's been being bought left and right, but I know from the property in my area, I don't feel that it's being maintained in a way to mitigate fire. So I'd like to know what their plans might be for cleaning out some of the property. And then I'll walk around with this mic for who else might want to ask a question.
Hi, I'm Ian Peach. I'm the land superintendent with the land bank. We do not have a specific plan for cleaning out properties, but I can speak for the commission that we're all very open to find out what that strategy would be. In our land management plans,